Croissants are flaky pastries known for their distinctively layered texture. There are a number of myths and legends about the origin of the croissant, but it's generally known to have originated throughout Europe and been around since the 13th century. The croissant's signature texture is produced by folding butter into dough several times. This process is time-consuming and requires planning and patience, but it's not as daunting as it may seem. Similar to puff pastry dough, there are a whole host of variations with the technique depending on what chef is teaching, but this example presents a very traditional mainstream preparation. First, add all of the ingredients into the mixer bowl except the barrage of butter and mix for about 1.5 minutes. It should appear smooth and sticky. I'll be doing the process by hand. Clean off your bench scraper, and then you can do the rest by hand. Bring it together pretty aggressively. When it appears really dry like this, maybe that the flour is dry, you want to make sure that your dough is completely pliable when you're finished. Also, the flour will absorb more liquid as time goes on too. Clean up your bowl, remove the dough, and roll it into a rectangle that measures 9 inches by 4.5 inches. You won't really need any extra flour for this at all. After rolling out, wrap the dough in plastic and place it in the refrigerator for 20 minutes. While the dough is chilling, pound the barrage of butter into a 4.5-inch square, cover it in plastic, and refrigerate. This can get loud, so after pounding the butter, form the butter into a 4.5-inch square with your bench scraper. On the second pound, you can be a little more gentle. This barrage will be chilled for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes of both the butter and dough chilling, take them out and allow them to stand on your bench for 5 minutes. The butter should be really pliable and about the same consistency as the dough. The butter is called the barrage and the dough is called the trompe. The trompe may appear somewhat fragile at this point, but once we start rolling, it'll get a lot more strong. Kind of test fit the butter in, and it may be too small. That's okay. We can roll out the dough, the trompe, a little bit longer. Put a little bit of flour on your bench just to get started. A little bit of flour on top. And roll it twice as long as the butter is. I'm going to place the barrage on the trompe. Be sure to brush off your excess flour with your brush and press the barrage into the trompe so that it adheres nicely. Then you're going to roll with the seam, this direction, till it's about 8 by 24 inches. Don't be afraid to put down a little extra flour at this point because you're going to be brushing it off eventually. The dough should be about 8 inches by about 24 inches long. Dust off the excess flour. Bring 1/3 down. So now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees clockwise. And if you'll notice, the seam is on the left-hand side. It can be on either side, but when I take it out of the refrigerator after resting, I'm going to start with the left-hand side with the seam. After folding into thirds, cover and place the folded dough in the refrigerator for 20 minutes. This allows the butter to chill and the gluten has time to relax. When the dough is removed, similar to last time, allow it to sit for 5 minutes after removing it from the refrigerator. You'll see that it is kind of hydrate a little bit more, it's a little more supple. It's going to be a lot easier for you to roll it out now. We're still going to use a fair amount of flour on the bench and on our dough. Have your brush at the ready. Again, we're going to roll it out to 8 by 24. And if you'll notice too, the seam is on the left-hand side, just like I did when I put it away. Just as before, get up underneath it and relax it. Make sure it's not sticking to the bench at all. Brush off your excess flour. Bring the top flap down. Get that nice and flat. Brush off the excess flour as well. And bring the last flap up. Brush off the excess flour and wrap it in plastic. This needs one more resting period, and then that'll be your final turn. This is our third and final turn. You'll see the dough is much easier to roll out now. Brush off the excess flour. Bring the top down. After the third turn is finished, you're going to wrap this really tightly in plastic for its overnight rest. It may rise a little bit in the refrigerator, but it may not. After allowing the dough to chill overnight, remove it from the refrigerator and allow it to sit for 5 minutes. You'll see some changes in the dough. It's fully hydrated now, much more soft to the touch, and it may have risen just slightly a little bit. We're going to cut this dough in half. Roll the dough into a large rectangle 1/4 inch thick. Use some flour on the bench. You will be dusting it off though. You can roll the dough up on your pin and then right down on the sheet pan. Once you have your dough rolled out to about 1/4 inch thick, and it's about the size of a half sheet pan, it's going to be on that sheet pan and you're going to put it in the freezer for about 30 minutes. After chilling, once again, dust off the excess flour with a brush. We're brushing out the excess flour so that the croissant will adhere to itself. If you have too much excess flour on the croissant when you cut it, it'll be kind of dull in color as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to trim the edges just a little bit here, just to get a really clean cut. Don't throw away those edges, they are good. And I have a template here that will give me a croissant about 10 inches long and about 3 inches wide. After a while, you'll be able to cut these by eyesight, but for right now, let's use a template. 10 inches long, 3 inches wide. These are isosceles triangles. So after a while, you'll be able to cut them by eye. When you have your scraps, kind of stack them up like this. Don't ball them into one piece of dough. Get the croissants all facing the same direction. And you're going to cut a 1/2 inch slit at the bottom of each croissant. And this will help open up the croissant and give you kind of an open space as you roll the croissant. Give yourself some room to roll the croissants. And pull the ends apart right here and start rolling. Don't touch the middle, roll just on the edges. Roll back and forth to get that nice tapered look to them. Then pull the tail and push the croissant into the tail. Pull it apart, looks kind of like the Eiffel Tower there. Open it up, and you'll notice that open space right in here, that will be filled when the croissant is proofed. Pull the tail, push the croissant into the tail. If your dough is a little stiff, you can kind of loosen it up like this. Give it a little pull. Open up the bottom there. And again, your rolling should be out towards the edges. We never want to press down on the middle of the croissant itself. Continue shaping all the croissants and place them on a parchment-lined pan. You don't want to crowd these either. Once they're all formed, egg wash each of them. When you egg wash, make sure the egg's completely mixed up. Dab it against the side of the bowl and brush down towards the point of the croissant. After egg washing, cover the pan and allow the croissants to rise at room temperature until double in volume. This could take an hour and a half or even longer. When they're ready, the layers should be apparent on the cut side. When the croissants have doubled in size, egg wash one more time. You need to be a little more gentle when you're egg washing them for the second time, as they may deflate. Finally, place them in a preheated 375-degree oven and bake them until they become deeply golden brown, or for roughly 15 minutes. Croissants can be filled before rolling with numerous types of filling, including cream cheese, meats, chocolate, or savory cheeses. They can be described as half puff pastry and half yeast bread, so their applications are numerous. Not only can they be served alone, but they can be sliced and used for a sandwich. These crescent-shaped laminated rolls have been around since the Renaissance and are the most well-known type of traditional viennoiserie. Because of their popularity and the fact they can be enjoyed in countless ways, the croissant technique is an important skill to master.